order at 7:04 p.m. on July 27th, 2020. Roll call, please.
Director Penrose,
Here.
Director Blanchard,
Here.
Director Lohman.
Here.
Susie, roll call, please.
Yeah.
She's doing it.
Director Ruddock,
Here.
Director Dye,
Here.
Chair Slater Carter.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum, all present.
Good. Let's move on to public comment, oral communication, and I should look at the participants. I know we had a comment.
Hi, I'd like to comment. Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Michelle.
Can you hear-
First, I see Greg Diegas had sent an email and he wanted to comment tonight. So
Cool.
let's call on Greg and then,
Chair Senator Carter, what you may want to do there is have him, if he's wanting to talk on item 4A, you may want to have him actually wait until that item on the agenda.
I may, but he has some other parts that are
Does he?
not 4A as I
He had his
recall.
thumbs up.
Okay.
No, I think I can wait till 4A. I think that's the
Okay.
right approach.
Then we will call on Michelle Dragony.
So today, something dramatic happened on the coastal trail. They closed the Miramar Bridge. And you can't get around any way other than going onto the highway. And your pipe is running along that bridge. And I was hanging out the whole afternoon and I was talking to people as they were, coming on and off, finding their routes and stuff like that. And there are kids that were partying down at the beach and they were walking along the pipe on the outer perimeter of the bridge.
Wait, what?
Yep, they closed
We're
down
not
the bridge.
using that pipe. That we have a bypass in place and we are working on a permanent replacement. We are not using that pipe at all right now.
Oh, okay, good.
It's a GCSD pipe.
GCSD pipe and we are not using it.
On both sides of the bridge, it's GCS.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Oh, so it's
Okay.
okay for the people to walk on it then.
No.
No.
I'm not going to say that, but it is does
So-
not affect.
I just wanted to alert you. So obviously the kids are like, they're hanging off the pipe in the bridge because they're kids. I would have done the same thing if I had to get to point A to point B, if I was that age. So the county might want to be contacted about, closing off those lateral points. They've had to do it before if they want to keep people off of things. But the other question is, I'd like maybe somebody offline to contact me, is how did it get to this point where they're closing a bridge for a year and there was no notification, and now they're shunting people all the way up to Highway 1, and people are going against the traffic on the west side of the highway because there's no way to cross the highway to get to anywhere to cross, to go down the highway. There's no connect to the coast side. So I just wanted to alert you guys to this issue. The pipe's not an issue, so that was my biggest concern. But nonetheless, as an agency, I just want to make sure you knew about it.
Thank you. I would suggest you call,
I talked to Chris Hunter today. I'm going to send you a link to in chat on the pictures and stuff like that in case you haven't been down there.
See it?
But
I suggest you call Jim Porter at Public Works.
yeah, okay.
It's a county bridge.
Yeah, so the story goes, and I get the story partly from the SAM meetings, is that the Coastal Commission, the California Coastal Commission, has been slow about approving the permit for the bridge replacement, which is why people are looking for other avenues for their pipes. Is that true?
Yes.
That's between the Coastal Commission and the county, not
All right.
Sam.
No, I understand that, but if anybody has any intel
Oh.
offline, I'd love to hear what the story is. Because it's bizarre that they would close it down. There was no public notice except for a social media release. I think it was on Saturday, and I didn't see it. And I'm all over social media. And they didn't even post an analog sign at the site, which said, we'll be closing this bridge. So I got trapped on the south side of the bridge after they closed it down. And I had to go against traffic on Highway 1, which I don't do road at all. And it was freaky. was horrible. There was somebody coming on their right of way going north, but I was trapped. I had to go that way. It's the only way I was going to get home. And there was a couple of parents with a little child. They were walking along the highway because, again, they got trapped too.
I
So
found him.
their process.
Right, and it's very narrow on that bridge. It's about, my guess is less than 2 feet right of way.
18 inches. Yeah, it's pretty, it's scary. So at any rate, I know this is not your jurisdiction, but I just wanted to let you know about it as people who are part of public agency on the coast side.
Well,
Thank
for
you.
anybody who is watching this and everybody who is on this meeting who lives on the coast, I suggest a call to Jim Porter
Will do.
and the Coastal Commission and what's his name? The Board of Supervisors. I'm sorry, but Chris Hunter.
Don Horsley.
Because
Horsley.
Don Horsley, this affects every single one of us.
Yeah.
And it creates a traffic hazard on Highway 1, and they should at least have put a temporary bridge in for pedestrians and bicyclists.
I agree. So thank you for your attention and your time. I just want to
Thank you. Please stay for the rest of the meeting.
I was only informed today about it as well.
I know that the public, outreach was negligent. So thank
But
you.
the county is working on a detour plan. But of course, they should have done it before.
Yep.
I'll talk to you, Debbie, offline. I'd love to hear even where they're going because I did extensive research. I don't know where they can go.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Michelle.
there's not much option. Thank you, Michelle. And I don't see any more hands up on our list here for public comment. So we can move right along then to the consent agenda, which has to approve the minutes of July 13, 2020, approve disbursements of July 27, receive the fiscal year 2019-20 revenue and expense report for the period ending June 30, 2020, set salary and terms of conditions for employment of unrepresented employees, and set the bi-weekly employee salary schedule effective July 1, 2020. And I wanted to comment, I'm sorry, I forgot, but we had an incredible honor. One of our employees, well, Keishan, why don't you talk about it, because you're the one who really did this, and Carlos then wrote the report. You were the one who took the initiative to see if we couldn't get the funding, and Carlos wrote a fabulous report, and what a talented group of staff we have. So
Do you guys want to, Chair Senator Carter, do you want to pull, if you're going to discuss it, do you want to pull it off the consent agenda? I mean, your call. but-
I'm sorry, I meant to address this under public comment. And so I
Oh.
jumped backwards for a minute.
Oh, okay, very, very well.
Okay,
Chair prerogative.
okay, can I go ahead?
Please.
Okay, Sam is in the process of, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so Sam is applying for some grants from FEMA for COVID-related activities. And in this connection, we have put in our application for pump failure, which occurred at Valimar lift station due to the use of flushable wipes. And therefore, this application is in progress right now. We are not sure about the status of application. And therefore, we were required to write a report on the entire pump failure, giving details about when it happened, how it happened, and all that stuff. So in that connection, Carlos Mendez was the caseworker, and he was actually at that site during midnight of March 20th and 21st. And that's when he attended to it. And so he was the rightful person to write the complete report. And we attached that and sent it along with our application to FEMA. And we got a good feedback from FEMA on the report. I will just read it out to you guys. It's addressed to me from a gentleman by name Philip Abbey, from Emergency Management Specialist from the San Diego office of the FEMA Public Assistance Program. And it reads like this. It says, as a part of my duties, I recently read a report describing an incident on March 20th and 21st at your Valimar lift station. The report is the best written incident report that I have read in many years. I commend your staff member, Carlos Mendez, for the clear and concise writing, as well as his attention to detail. After reading the narrative, I felt as if I had actually been on the site and experienced the incident myself. I seldom reach out in this way, but in this instance, I commend this Carlos Mendez for crafting an excellent piece of workmanship. So this is what I shared with the board, and I'm sharing with you all right now.
Great job, Carlos. Also, we should say that this is, we think that this happened because of the increased use of flushable wipes during the COVID situation.
Yes, in fact, we did have a recent spill this afternoon at Half Moon Bay, although it was category 3, and it is attributed to the flushable wipes. They pulled out a lot of flushable wipes from the pipe, and we had a spill. It was small. It was 2.5 gallons, but nevertheless attributed to the use of flushable wipes.
You've been putting a lot of time and effort into, as we all have, into communicating to the public that flushable wipes are a big problem.
I got my postcards today. Very important.
Yes.
Thank you.
Can you send a copy to Sharman?
Yes. Okay, that's all I had.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
You're muted, Chair.
Here I am talking and you can see me not saying anything. So we have a second and a motion to approve the consent agenda, and we need a roll call vote.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Blanchard,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Ruddock,
Yes.
Director Dye,
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
motion approved.
We are moving along to regular business, which is to receive the draft report from Woodward and Curran on the wet weather flow management alternatives analysis and give direction to staff regarding project alternatives. And Keishan, please do the introduction.
Yes. So the Sam has been pursuing the wet weather storage expansion for quite some time. And in that connection, the board has authorized the design for the wet weather storage facility and authorized the staff to advertise and get bids for it. The bid was received and the bids were pretty high. We bid once in last October, then we bid again in January, and then the third time we bid in May. And all the time the price was high. It was higher than the budgeted costs. And therefore, it was felt that we should look at several alternates for the wet weather storage expansion. And therefore, the board requested wastewater management specialists to perform the evaluation and alternatives analysis. So WMS, which is led by Dan Child, did the evaluation and brought it to the board months back. He evaluated 4 alternates, which was no project or doubling the existing wet weather storage expansion to 200,000 gallons, or increasing it to 400,000 gallons, or finally upsizing the pump station to take care of the wet weather requirements. He brought it back to the board a couple of weeks later and came up with a recommendation that increasing the pump capacity at Portola pump station as a preferred alternate. At that point of time, the board requested an independent engineering evaluation by a qualified firm to review the data and the project recommendations. And therefore, staff reached out to several engineering firms, and with the the response that we received, staff finalized Woodard and Curran to carry out this study and perform the study and bring it back to the board today. And we have gentlemen from Woodard and Curran with us, and the report is attached in the packet. And I will pass on the forum to Woodard and Curran, who have put together a PowerPoint presentation.
Fantastic. Thanks, Kishan. I'm going to try to share my screen, and you guys please let me know when you can see it.
Okay, I've given you authorization. Yep, okay.
All right, great. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, and you see the main presentation. Sometimes when we share these, it doesn't share the full presentation. It shares a version with a preview. Do you see just the first slide?
No, we see the side, we see down the side too.
All right, one moment, and I will correct that.
Yep, I see just the slide now.
Oh, you do?
So I see just the slide.
Okay, well, let's see if that sticks. Wonderful.
Whose heartbeat is that?
I don't know. Fantastic. So let me know if anything goes wrong with the presentation, please. I can no longer see you since I'm presenting. So if you do have questions and you'd like to stop me as we go, please do. My name is Tony Valdivia. I was the lead engineer for the analysis performed by Woodard and Curran. So first of all, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to do this work for SAM. Just a little bit more about our team and some acknowledgements. Also on this call tonight is Jim Graydon, who's been the project manager for the effort. Our project engineer, Athena, was instrumental in doing the analysis. So thanks to both of them, of course. And then to SAM's staff and the sort of group of engineering consultants who preceded us. Kishan mentioned the most recent analysis, but of course there's been quite a bit of work done recently and over the years to help SAM solve this problem in their system and really plan for the future. So our analysis is really built on that foundation. It's a strong foundation, and looking forward to sharing with you our results tonight. So what was our project objective? As Kishan mentioned, we were asked to evaluate 4 potential projects for handling projected wet weather flows in the intertie pipeline system. These are the same analysis that wastewater management specialist was asked to review. So in a sense, it is true peer review of that work, but also looking back into the work that's been done to date. The projects are, as Kishan mentioned, the Portola pump station improvements, a no project status quo option, 200,000 gallons of storage, which is the project that has bid several times, and then a larger storage option of 400,000 gallons of storage. Basic evaluation criteria, it's a pretty standard approach on the surface, where we're looking at the capital and operating costs, referred to as the life cycle costs in the analysis for each of the alternatives, but also the ability of those alternatives to mitigate future risk relative to spills, fines, and reputation of SAM. So, of course, the curve here is generic, but I think it goes without saying that a higher cost project is generally going to help you mitigate more risk than a lower cost project is certainly true in this case. Project flow criteria. So SAM, the board has set a policy that the IPS be capable of a 10-year, 6-hour storm. From the flow that Kishan shared with us in discussions with him, we understand that, over the past 6 years, peak flows may have been around 4 MGD or 2,800 gallons per minute. However, that's not necessarily the storm that needs to be designed to. We'll get to that a little bit later in the presentation. But first, a little bit about the objectives and limitations for the non-pump station options, which are shown here. Our approach, given the time that was available, was to really rely on prior studies by others, those other firms that I introduced early on, to define the project and the technical details of those projects. We would develop capital costs based on the recent bid for the storage project. And of course, because that was only done for the 200,000 gallon project, extrapolate those for a potential 400,000 gallon project. We would develop O&M costs based on current SAM practices. So how much effort is really involved in maintaining the existing storage that you have in the system. And then very, very importantly, we had done no independent validation of storm flows or project capacity. So we have relied on those previous reports to really define what those potential flows are into the Portola pump station, or which need to be stored for that matter. For the Portola pump station, the approach was much more involved. And that's because this pump station alternative is the one, it hasn't been bid as a project. It's not similar to another project. This is the project that needed to be fleshed out to add technical details and costs so it could be directly compared to the other three alternatives. The most recent work by WMS certainly defined that project, and we tried to move that forward in a detailed fashion so that we could justify some of that cost data. Our work included mechanical and electrical systems evaluation, new equipment selection and operational analysis for the pump station. And then we included reasonable allowances for items that were beyond that technical scope, such as work on the structures or other items in the force main system that were beyond our scope, but which we believe it's valid to assume will have to occur in order to make this project viable. And of course, we prepared full capital and operating cost estimates. There are some limitations that I mentioned to this approach. One is we did not look at the treatment plant. Clearly, a treatment plant with physical and biological processes is subject to some form of disruption if flows change significantly from what it was designed to do or has been doing. That was really beyond the scope of our analysis, but certainly it would be looked at if the pump station project were pursued. We didn't do a detailed analysis of permitting requirements. We do touch in the report on the potential to have complications relative to CEQA or Coastal Commission if the project is going to potentially be viewed to have a larger environmental footprint, outside of the pump station building, or if it may potentially be viewed to be growth inducing because of the increase in capacity to move water to the plant. Both of those should be considered if moving forward with the pump station. And of course, we didn't do a structural evaluation of the building, but a building constructed in 1979, in our experience, of course, won't have been built to current codes, but would require some level of retrofit, either for larger equipment or simply for life and safety, to make sure that that building during a seismic event remains standing and functional. That would typically be done with a large retrofit project such as this. So a little bit about the Portola pump station improvements. The idea to increase the size of the Portola pump station is not a new one. Previous studies has evaluated doing that project, doing an upgrade there, but it's always been considered relative to a costly parallel force main to parallel Granada force main, that being the force main downstream of the pump station. It is an attractive project to be able to handle those flows and push them to the treatment plant. But as we'll discuss here, the limitations of the Granada force main have really made that in the past prohibitively expensive. But that Granada force main is not the same force main that has been evaluated in the past. Much of that force main has now been repaired or replaced through action by SAM. And so the question now is, has that pump station improvement alternative now become viable? Do improvements to that force main allow the pump station to be upgraded, use the existing force main, and be cost effective? And that was really where our focus was in the analysis that we performed. A little bit about system hydraulics. I do get technical here, but I can walk you through any questions you've got. But I wanted to kind of draw attention to a couple items. What you're looking at here is the system curve. The system curves for this pump station were developed by SRT consultants as a part of their work preparing for the current project, which, as you know, will place 2 new 60 horsepower pumps at the station. The capacity with new 60 horsepower pumps, and when I talk capacity, I'm talking about firm capacity, is 3,000 gallons per minute. And firm capacity is defined as the capacity of a pump station with its largest pumping unit out of service. So the largest pumping unit goes down, either planned or unplanned. What is the remaining capacity at the station? And that's a critical concept I wanted to get across because it is the standard for wastewater pump stations here in California, that you match the firm capacity of your pump station to the design capacity for the pump station. The improvement project capacity that we evaluated is 5,000 gallons per minute. That was also the number used in the recent work by WMS. It's not known in discussing it with Kishan, whether that actually correlates to the actual design flow that the board policy corresponds to. It is a number that has been used in the past, and for that reason we carry it forward. But I don't want to represent that Woodard and Curran independently has been able to validate that that number correlates to the design flow policy. For reference, that 5,000 gallons per minute is about 7.2 million gallons. So what we're talking about doing is increasing flow capacity by just less than 70%. 67%, and the corresponding increase in head or pressure energy that we need to add to the flow via the pump station is 91%. Some key points that we make in the report are that at 5,000 gallons per minute, the force main velocity is over 10 feet per second. In our experience and opinion, that is very fast for raw wastewater flow, and it may result in long-term damage to the force main. The reason being that these are solids and grit-bearing waters. Moving them quickly through a force main, even the new force main, does have the potential to degrade the interior surface of even the HDPE, the new force main that's been installed by SAM. Typically, when we look at force mains, we try to keep the flow velocities between 2 and 7 feet per second under all operating conditions, 5 feet per second being sort of optimum, but will allow a peak. So in our opinion, Woodard and Curran's opinion, planning to operate at 10 feet per second is potentially something that you would want to avoid. It's certainly nothing we would design a force main for. We're designing it from scratch. One of the reasons for that is that head loss in pipes increases exponentially as the velocity goes up, and pump and motor sizes increase with head loss. So a consequence of moving flow through there at higher velocity, you'll incur additional friction head losses through the pipe. And to make up for that, the pumps at Portola Pump Station will get larger, and we'll talk a little bit about the sizing of that. So our conclusion here is that, in our opinion, the Granada force main is just too small at 5,000 gallons per minute, and as has been recommended in the past, a larger or a parallel force main would still be required and recommended. And just in terms of what that would do, theoretically, the curve that just popped up here, you can see that it flattens. So this is a different kind of curve flattening than we've been talking about recently. This is hydraulic curve flattening. It allows us to move the same amount of flow through with lower head loss, and therefore reduce the size of the pumping units that we're talking about. Nevertheless, we have moved forward with the analysis of how to situate pumps inside of the existing pump station. We really did, at 5,000 gallons per minute, look at 3 alternatives. So here they are graphically. Alternative 1. So at the top of these graphs, you'll see new wet weather pumps. These are pumps that we've identified that would be installed to pump that 5,000 gallons per minute. On the bottom are the SAM, the existing 60 horsepower pumps, the brand new Yeoman's pumps already purchased. So for alternative 1, we look at doing it with just one pump, one pump capable of moving 5,000 gallons per minute. And as we've mentioned, because firm capacity is the standard that we'd recommend adherence to, we have a standby pump there that's capable of that as well. Those are relatively large pumps. Those are 350 horsepower. Alternative 2 adds another duty pump. So we remove one of your 60 horsepower pumps from active service. We split that 5,000 gallons per minute over 2 pumps. And as WMS concluded, that would take to approximately 250 horsepower pumps. An
Excuse me,
alternative
Tony.
three.
Excuse me, Tony.
Yes, please.
Could we ask people to mute so that we don't hear the background noises? Will you please mute and just allow only Tony's phone to be unmuted, Tony's speaker to be unmuted? Yeah, we're getting a lot of background noise.
You can see who's not muted. Folks who were not muted, please mute.
Is it over? There's something about the voting.
No.
Maybe she needs to send from here. Huh? No, it's green.
Who are not muted, the people I see who are not muted is now me, Keishan, and Tony, and everyone else on my list has the mute.
The iPad is not muted. Can Keishan just mute them?
Yes, just mute them.
Keishan, just let me know when to continue since I can't see who's muted or not.
Okay, we're good to go.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Okay.
Unmuted. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, okay, so these are the three alternatives that we looked at. Again, just changing the number of what we refer to as duty pumps. How many pumps are we using to really convey that 5,000 gallons per minute? If you're wondering why we only looked at 4 pumps really is the limit to this station as we see it, without a very, very significant overhaul of the dry pit. You have 4 pumps in there now. There are access issues. The pumps are pulled from above, and making more space in this dry well, which is approaching 30 feet deep, just doesn't seem realistic to us. So we stuck with 4 pumps for that reason. Some other observations, again, jumping back to a system curve, but now looking at the pump curves overlaid with those, is that the 60 horsepower pumps, or having a smaller pump option, is actually very important to this station. The sort of orangish tan area of the curve, you can see there's a top brown line, and then down in that green area, there's another brown line. Within that envelope, that's the pump performance curves, really from a single pump up to 3 pumps, 1 large pump operating in this case, but it's similar for the multiple pump options. But what I want to
demonstrate the screen. I can't see your screen, Tony.
Oh, is everyone seeing it, or?
I'm seeing it.
Okay.
I can see it.
I can see it.
Okay, go ahead, Tony. It must be something to do with my settings.
Okay. Well, fortunately,
I cannot see it either.
I see it.
Well, I don't think there's anything I can change. It is odd that some people are seeing it and some people aren't. So I don't know that it's anything on my end. Kishan, are you still not able to see it?
Yes, I'm still not able to see it.
That's a first for me, where some can see it and some can't.
Yeah.
Can I make a comment, which is that this feels like a fairly complicated presentation that I'm not sure I'm ready to review tonight. I'm not sure. It seems as if there's a lot of information being presented here, which is somewhat different and is presented in a different way from the report that we received. And since my intention is to make a motion that we defer this to a later meeting, perhaps there's a way that this information could be conveyed to us other than going through it tonight.
One suggestion I might make is if the technical information, and some of this was in the appendix to the report, it's true. If the technical information is perhaps a bit much, we could fast forward just a few slides to really where we start to talk about the project costs and focus less on the methodology.
I think it's great to go ahead and finish the presentation, and then we can talk after that with alternative discussion methods or something like that. I'd like to see just the full presentation for now.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
we
and
can,
just-
you know,
I'm
talk
okay
about
with
it
that.
afterwards.
Want
I would as well.
All right. So I guess maybe unresolved is for folks that are having trouble seeing the presentation. Yeah, some can see it and some can't. I'm not sure how to resolve that through the Zoom interface.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is to leave the meeting and sign in again, and maybe that will help. So Keishan, you can see if I'm leaving now and I'll sign in.
Okay.
Yeah, we can also publish all this entire PowerPoint to everybody also.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I can see your screen. I can see your screen now,
Okay.
Tony.
Is everyone back?
I think we're still waiting on Chair Slater Carter.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. If you could just give me a thumbs up when everyone's back, since I can't see the Zoom interface.
Sure. So the screen that you have now has got the title, smaller 60 horsepower pumps are important, right?
Yes, that's good.
Okay. Good.
Luckily, we only have one agenda item, so this is okay.
Just a note for the board while we're waiting that this is an informational item, so we have quite a bit of discretion as to how to proceed.
Here she comes.
I am back, so I will mute myself. And now I see the lovely graphic.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, I will continue on. And by all means, please do interrupt me if there's questions or anything's unclear. Okay. So the point we wanted to make on this slide is really that the 60 horsepower pumps, that green area of this curve, they allow you to get to lower flows and lower heads than those large pumps that we're contemplating as part of this project would really permit you to do. And that's because for most of the operating year, your flows into the Portola pump station are relatively low, an average dry weather flow of 350 gallons per minute versus the 5,000 that we're talking about for peak flows. So we really do think it's important to maintain some smaller pumps, and in particular because the district, or because Sam has recently invested in these new pumps, there's good chance to make use of those as part of this project. But what that means is that we're going to eliminate alternatives that didn't include any of those small pumps, and really try to maximize the advantage of having them. That leaves a couple alternatives. In the memo, we go through the cost analysis between alternatives 1 and 2 and determine that at a planning level, there's really not a significant difference in cost between those, as it turns out. And so we select alternative 1, the option that allows you to keep 2 of your existing new pumps in service while replacing 2 of the others at the station with larger pumps. Other pump station electrical improvements that we looked at, we chased the pump and motor horsepower through the entire electrical system and determined there's a significant amount of work to be done there. Not surprising when you consider that we're increasing the horsepower of the station by so much. A new standby generator, which would be moved out of the building, a new main distribution and switchboard, new variable frequency drives for all pumps, a new motor control center for the smaller loads, new HVAC system for air conditioning because we're adding additional heat loads to the building, new room configurations to make better use of the space inside the building. The generator room will free up. We'll move some panels inside of there. A new utility service, assuming that it wasn't, and it does not appear to be size for this size facility, and then new conductors, the wires that actually bring the power to the pump. So it's a substantial list of requirements that would need to be met. And it requires really an overhaul of most of the electrical systems at the station. And so our estimates and project description really account for that. Additional assumptions that we've had to make, also as detailed in the memo, that would be a new surge tank. As you increase velocities through those pipelines, you also increase the potential for damaging surges in the event of a sudden power outage, for example, while the pumps are running. So a new surge tank, either to replace or in addition to the existing surge tank you recently installed. Structural retrofit we talked about, that's likely. We've included some dollars in there. There's really no way to validate that without a detailed structural analysis. Retrofit of force main air valves, again, because those air valves have some ability to relieve surge or at least admit air in the event of negative pressures. And then pump station bypass for some construction activities where the wet well or dry well or portions thereof need to be taken out of service. We're assuming some level of bypass as part of that. So where do we land? Back in the realm of costs, the construction cost that we arrive at is about $3.4 million. To keep it as a fair comparison with the other alternatives, including the one that's already bid, we've excluded soft costs from that number, but that would typically be engineering, administration, construction management, and then engineering services during construction, about 25%. And it assumes use, as we've discussed, of the existing force main. Annual operating costs is an estimate, but it includes labor, power, maintenance, and parts for the station to operate it. We also did a fairly basic net present value analysis for comparison purposes, where we pulled together those annual operating costs over a 20-year period and bring those back to a net present value. When I say fairly basic, I mean that we're not taking into account things like inflation, et cetera. For comparison purposes of capital projects such as this, that's a fairly standard approach. It's not the same as a rate analysis, and I certainly would want you to do your capital improvement planning based on these annual numbers. So treat this total life cycle cost as what it is, which is a number developed on the same basis across all projects to allow a comparison. And then we don't do anything in this instance with the $300,000 settlement from the regional board. We don't know, because it hasn't been vetted with the board, this approach, whether or not that would apply. So we've assumed that it will not. What sort of risk? Remember we've been talking about the costs and potential risks of projects, or risk mitigation, I should say. What sort of potential risk does this either create or help mitigate? There's, as we've talked about, risk to damaging the existing force main over time. There are portions of that force main, as we understand it, that aren't retrofit. And the question would be, to what degree are they ready to accept additional pressures and flows, and then the high velocities, which may damage any portion of that force main. You do get redundancy in pumping. As we've talked about, the firm capacity is there, which allows you to match your design flow to your actual pump station firm capacity. So that's a good thing. It does have a multi-year schedule for implementation, which is a potential schedule risk because it takes longer to implement. Design could take anywhere up to a year. Maybe it's 8 months to a year. Construction would at least take a year. And that doesn't include the last bullet point here, which is permitting, which we're estimating could be complicated and therefore rather time intensive if there's a CEQA or Coastal Commission component to that. The no project alternatives. So again, we didn't redefine these alternatives from previous work. We do summarize them in the report. So there's an initial cost associated with that one, as you know, whereby you would forfeit that sort of settlement credit payment from the regional board and have to make that cost. There is an annual cost that we've associated with this one, and I want to kind of walk you through why that is. First and foremost, there is the Portola pump station, which even under this alternative would continue to operate in its existing capacity. So it makes sense that for comparison purposes, we would have to take that into account. And we're estimating that here is 97,000. Thinking back to the Portola pump station alternative where it was about 110, that difference may not seem large. And part of that's because these big pumps that are being put in to pump peak wet weather flows don't operate a lot of the time. So the net actual increase in operating costs isn't as significant as you may think. We have associated with this one some labor, equipment rental, maintenance for high flow management. We haven't verified that number, but I did like that in the WMS report, they kind of likened this project in cost to the 200,000 gallon storage project. And the reason they did that is because SAM has a very proactive approach to trying to manage high flows in the system. But in being proactive, it is labor intensive. It takes operators away from the plant and into the system to make sure that the system is storing flow in Baker tanks, temporary facilities. And so it's a relatively labor intensive number. We gave it a value of $95,000 per year. Again, that's roughly the equivalent of the 200,000 gallon storage project in terms of its initial cost. In that respect, we're agreeing with WMS certainly that there are costs associated with the no project alternative, and we wanted to capture those. We just haven't been able to verify what the numbers exactly are. Same 20-year net present value approach. It gives you $2.9 million for this alternative. So the no project alternative does have a cost, most definitely. What are the risks or risk mitigations associated with this project? Like I've been mentioning, the labor and maintenance intensive approach is a risk. It pulls folks away from where you may need them at the treatment plant to be in the system managing flows actively as opposed to having a passive or a pump station project. And then there's sort of the softer side of things. So the failure to complete a capacity improvement project per that settlement agreement, it's likely to place SAM under additional scrutiny and increased risk of larger fines or legal action in the event of a spill. And this is a real thing. We know that the regional board is likely to view the decision to do nothing if in the event that there should be a future spill as a problem, as a reason to potentially come down harder on SAM, and it's not a position necessarily that we could recommend putting ourselves in if there are other alternatives. And that goes along with the third bullet point, which is just the erosion of regulators, erosion of reputation with regulators, NGOs, or the public in the event that there is a problem in the future and a project wasn't implemented when it could have been, when there were alternatives to do so. Next project is the 200,000 gallons storage cost. This is, of course, a very well-defined project because it's been out to bid several times. So the construction cost at $1.4 million is relatively known. Again, we're not adding soft costs to these, but this one, just as a point of reference, would have lower soft costs if we did because it's a shovel-ready project. It's still going to have some administrative costs during the construction phase, but the design and the permitting has been taken care of. Settlement credit would apply to this as negotiated with the regional board of $300,000. Net construction costs at 1.1. So here we take a discount of the construction costs to account for that settlement credit. We can talk about that a little bit more maybe at the conclusion of the presentation and how that sort of impacts the total costs. But I think what we were looking at from Sam's perspective in terms of out-of-pocket money, presumably that $300,000 credit could be put into the project, but it's not necessarily a check. It's not cash that you put into it. Annual operating costs, it's just operating the Portola pump station as you do now, but again, for comparison purposes, we throw that in here, and then you have your net present value. Relative to risk, there's the passive overflow, which of course is not dependent on mechanical systems. So you have storage tanks that fill and drain biogravity. Sam has indicated to us that the cost so far for existing facilities of this type, it takes relatively little labor effort to maintain them, which means you have high availability. When you need it, it's there, it's in service, and there's value to that. But at this size, based on reports that have been done in the past, you're not expected to be able to manage your 10-year, 6-hour flow. Again, we haven't independently verified that, but based on work done by other consulting firms in the past, this level of storage doesn't get you to that level of containment. Which brings us to the 400,000 gallons of storage costs. Here we've escalated the cost, the $1.4 million for the $200,000 up. When we did that, we do have to acknowledge that this project isn't as well defined, and therefore there's some contingencies that result in the cost being slightly more than double. Those contingencies would be fleshed out during the design process, potentially bringing that cost down, but this is where we've arrived. Settlement credit, as we've discussed, we assume that the regional board would consider twice the storage just as good as the 200,000 gallons of storage. Annual operating costs are the same as the previous alternative, and a 20-year net present value of $3.9 million. And it has, as you might imagine, the same benefits as the 200,000 gallon storage project, with the addition of this bottom point, which is according to previous analyses, 600,000 gallons of total storage. The new 400,000 gallons that we're contemplating here, plus the existing 200,000, is expected or has been projected to handle that 10-year, 6-hour storm. So where does that put us in terms of a summary? Well, it puts us, we've summarized here sort of the cost information we just ran through and the net present value, and then sort of a qualitative review of the risk assessment, which is what I want to focus on this slide. Risk assessment for the pump station improvements, again, because that force main is, for lack of a better term, the weak link, or at least the link that is of most concern here. It's a moderate level of risk. The force main remains your sort of single point of failure in that system. The no project alternative comes along with a high risk, in our opinion, because the failure to complete an improvement alternative or a capacity improvement would put you at greater risk, we feel, relative to regulatory agencies in the event of a future spill, and also lawsuits from NGOs, and then your public reputation. There's the 200,000 gallons of storage, which we think is a moderate risk. And the reason we're characterizing that as a moderate risk, even though it, per previous evaluations, doesn't have your full design storm flow, is because that design storm flow is a value that we don't necessarily know is, I don't want to say correct, but we haven't been able to independently verify that. You do have, however, the Carollo study that was done that initially indicated that what you need is the 400,000 gallons of storage, which is why the next project is categorized as low risk. With all this in mind, where do we end up? We end up with a recommendation to pursue the 400,000 gallons of storage in your system as a passive overflow facility. We've talked about the relative good risk profile of that, being able to rely on that to drain and fill without a mechanical system. It does, according to the previous work that's been done, contain the design level storm, so it meets that board policy. And it has, in our opinion, a reasonable life cycle and capital costs associated with it. That said, there's a couple other additional considerations before I wrap up. Storage can be phased. It can be phased as part of capital expenditure planning. So 200,000 gallon projects are going to cost marginally more than a single one. That's because you lose the economy of scale, but it does give you the ability to move forward with the project that is designed and shovel ready now, while budgeting for a future project to duplicate it. And so there is the ability to really phase that to match capital budget planning. Second point here, it really is the Granada force main limitations that are driving this recommendation away from the pump station improvements. As has been found in the past, if with a parallel force main there, that pump station alternative is going to be much more compelling because it's going to give you the ability, without storing it in the system, to just move that water through to the treatment plant. And then you also eliminate some of the risk associated with having a single force main system with limited ability to take it down for service and inspection. So it's really the Granada force main that is making that pump station difficult to recommend as conceptualized here. With that, we have made it through to the end of the presentation. So I want to thank you again for the opportunity to work on this effort. It's a very interesting project. And certainly I'm available to answer any questions, comments you have.
Thank you. That was fascinating. I would love to have this PowerPoint attached to the minutes of this meeting and put on the website as well for folks to be able to watch or rewatch if they have any questions.
Yes,
So
Chair, it'll be done. It'll be done like what we do always.
Thank you. Let's go to questions, and let's start with the public. So I see Greg Diegas, I see your hand up and your smiling face. So why don't you start with your questions? And since you were so kind to send us that email that was distributed and posted on the website, I've asked Keishan and the engineers to be able to answer the questions.
Catherine, I've got a quick procedure question.
Sure.
Is the agenda item and the goal tonight to receive the report, or are we going to work for 2 or 3 hours discussing it or arguing about it? I thought it was just
No,
to receive the report.
The item is to accept the report, and I'm going to suggest that we have until August 3rd to submit any questions and have any questions that are that Keishan and the engineers feel need more explanation than what's in the staff report and in the PowerPoint. We can discuss that then on August 10th. But
that's fine.
We need to discuss this before we can adopt it. So Greg, let's start with you.
I'm trying to screen share. Can anybody see it?
I see it.
Yes, I can see it.
It's a spreadsheet. Okay, so you were all, I believe Kishan forwarded this to Barbara and John Blanchard because I didn't have their emails. What I tried to do was take the decision criteria which were embedded in the report and present them graphically. So there's a group of cells over here colored pink, yellow, and green. I did not include every decision criteria because one was just mentioned tonight about the possible need for an earthquake retrofit if we did the pump station alternative. So I don't have a row for that. That would increase the risk of that and cost of that project. I also thought of one that was not mentioned, which is an extended power outage. There are other agencies that have run into trouble with the recent PG&E shutdowns where backup generators fail to provide power. So I suppose there's a risk possibility there, especially for an alternative like the pump station, which relies 100% on electricity. So we might want to consider adding that in. I'll defer to the engineering experts as to whether that's a material risk to be listed. What I see when I look at this, though, is a difference in my overall risk assessment. It appears to me the storage projects are much less risky than doing nothing or doing the pump station alternative. And that runs counter, Tony, to the graph you showed, which is typical of, cost reducing risk across the board. I also fixed some of the financial analysis. As Tony mentioned, he didn't inflate the operating costs. So I did, and updated the net present value. And there's also a confusion. I think I've got this right, but I'm open to comment. You have to pay $300,000 if you do nothing. They're not going to pay you if you do the project. So it's not right to reduce the capital cost of those three projects by 300,000. The right thing to do is to show the 300,000 in the no action case. So I updated the net present value calculations down here below to take into account the revised operating expense net present value. And you come up with these numbers, and the 200,000 gallon storage is much cheaper. So one question I have is, why is the extra 200,000 gallons in the 400,000 gallon so much more expensive? The capital cost goes from 1,400 to 2,900. I would expect some modest economy. And to lead up to trying to answer that question, I would ask this question: when is the $300,000 due to be paid? How much of a hurry are you in? Do you have time to actually put out for bid and spend more design money on 4,000 gallons of storage? Or should we just say, we've got a design, we've got most of the soft costs included in here, we've got a lot of extra soft costs to analyze the others, we don't have time. So when is that, and that's a question, I guess, for Kishen or the board, when is that $300,000 triggered to have to be paid?
We've got time until next year, June of next year, to complete the project.
Holy catfish. Well, what's the lead time for completing these projects?
Well, it's hard to say. It depends on when we award the contract.
We also, remember, we also have to be careful because we can't do grading during the wet weather season. So we have to get our grading done, is it in September?
All right, well, let me just wrap up my session saying, we already heard the pump station isn't going to be done in a year, okay? It looks like 200,000 gallons of storage. At least you've got the design done. I don't know that you can do the 400,000 gallon storage in a year. I kind of like the idea of doing it because of the reduction in risk, but at the costs that are forecast, I would have to agree with Tony. You'd be better off to do 200 now and another 200 later. But it sounds like you're going to throw away $300,000 if you don't hurry up and get started on the 200,000 gallon storage tank. So I'd like to hear a little discussion about why we're not moving ahead with what is obviously lower cost and lower risk than the other alternatives when we're under a deadline.
Thank you. Thank you. And that discussion is agendized for August 10th.
Thank you, Catherine.
Let me see. I see Greg's hand. I don't see any more public comments. Let's bring the discussion back to the board and start with Rick. Rick, you're muted.
Trying to be nice. I turned my clock off too. No, if the agenda item is to receive the thing and to vote August 10th, I have no more comments to make. Let's just do it then and resolve this thing and get moving.
Thank you. Jeremy, I see you want to make a comment.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think the intent here, and Kishen can, because we had talked about it earlier, is to, if there are comments that the board has or that or that the member agencies have, where this is not a final study yet, and so if there are places that revisions can be made, and there's still an opportunity to comment on it, especially since this has been, the vote will be postponed until the 10th. So I just want to make that clear. It's an opportunity for folks to still provide input.
That's right. Okay, let me see. Rick, do you want to continue with your comments, Rick, or just wait
No, that
until
was
August
it.
10th? Okay,
I don't want to sit
then-
here and debate all the options tonight. We're going to do that on the 10th and vote and be done
Okay.
with this on the 10th. Let's move on.
Jim Blanchard, do you have any comments?
No, I agree with Rick. Thank you.
Thank you. Deborah Penrose,
No comments.
no comment. Deborah Ruddick,
No comments at this time.
okay. And I will just say I've been, let me see,
You got Barbara Dye.
Okay.
I'm
Barbara
here.
Dye.
I'm here
Oh,
on my
you're here,
phone.
you're here. Hooray.
Yes, I am here. Do we need a motion or any kind of action to move it to the 10th?
Jeremy, I think it would be good to have a motion and a second and a vote, right?
Yeah, I mean, you
Adopt
could,
it?
yeah, well, not to
Accept it.
adopt it, you could move to table it until the 10th. You could do that, or you could just re-agendize it for the 10th. Either way is fine.
I move that we continue it till the 10th.
I just want to point out that the city does not have another city council meeting until August 23rd.
Hey, Keisha, did you want to mention, I mean, there is one fact that we haven't talked about tonight, and that is as I understand it, the bids, don't they expire, or the bid price, does that expire on the 31st of August?
That's right. It's expiring on July 29th, but the contractor has given an extension until August 31st.
So that some of the urgency is associated with that.
I would suggest that the city has in the past had special meetings, and I think this is something that would be worthwhile for the city to discuss. I do want to mention, in going through past notes, the first report on peer review for the wet weather project was made in February of the year 2000. And so was the inclusion of Portola for storage tanks. So this has been going on for a while. This is the at least the second and maybe the third or something. I haven't gone through all the minutes to see how many peer reviews we have had of this. I would love to see all of, excuse me. I would love to see all of these peer reviews assembled in a single document, if at all possible. But we have a motion on the table to continue this until August 10th. And
I would like to say that we're just continuing it for further discussion and analysis and potentially a vote, but we are not committing to a vote by continuing it to the 10th.
Well, we still need a vote to continue it to the 10th. We still need a vote to continue it to the 10th. And my suggestion is we continue it to the 10th, and that any and all questions from member agencies and the public be submitted to Keishan in writing in a timely fashion by August 3rd, so that Keishan and the engineers can have time to review them and answer what they feel is appropriate.
We're not going to be able to commit to that because our public works team is on vacation for the next 10 days. So August deadline does not work for us.
Catherine and Barbara, my first suggestion was we haven't even received the report. So I would like part of the motion
to receive the report.
Okay, as everybody knows, if we don't started in September, we lost another year.
That's right. So Rick, you've made the motion to receive the report. Am I correct?
Well, if I can, you want to incorporate that with Barbara, we need to receive the report tonight.
Okay, do we have let's do these in separate steps.
That would be fine with me. That would be fine with me.
Is that a second, Barbara?
Sure.
Thank you. All right, all those in favor to receive the report, let's have a roll call vote.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Blanchard,
Yes.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Roddick,
Yes.
Director Dye,
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter.
Yes.
Motion
So
passed.
now we have a motion to continue the discussion of the report. And we have Half Moon Bay who says they can't have a meeting until the end of the month, that their staff is on vacation, their public works staff is on vacation for the next 10 days.
We might be able to have a meeting. What we can't do is commit to our staff submitting questions by August 3rd.
Director Ruddick, I mean, I guess maybe understand the limitations, but maybe just the request could just be to do your best. I guess, you can't do it if no one's there. I mean, we're just trying to, working with Keisha, we're trying to move it forward before the end of August 31st deadline.
We'll put our questions in when we can get them in.
Understood.
They're already on vacation.
Sure.
Well, and I will note that I asked Keishan at our last meeting where we decided that this was going to be received at this meeting at the end of June, we asked for questions from each of the member agencies, and Granada submitted some and Montero submitted some, and none were submitted by Half Moon Bay. So this is the second opportunity Half Moon Bay has to go forward with this.
Catherine,
So we will.
if we look at the calendar,
At the bottom of the Grand Canyon and has no access to email or phone.
Thank you. Rick?
Catherine, we have a meeting on the 24th of August, which is still before the bids are released. Could Half Moon Bay commit to having an answer? We can have the discussion on the 10th with whatever questions everybody comes up with. Would Half Moon Bay commit to an answer and a vote on the 24th so we don't lose another $100,000?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll be prepared to vote by then. Yeah.
Okay. So we will continue this discussion until August 10th, and then we will, could we have a motion and a, I can't hear you, Deborah Penrose.
Yeah, I think Director Penrose had a comment.
I just was going to say that 10 days from now, that's before the August 10th. So the questions may be presented before August the 10th. We just can't promise that since they're not back. We will certainly try.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Well, Keishan, how does it work for us then to have this question submitted by August 3rd and have this as an agenda item, and then make this an agenda item for a final vote on August 24th? Do you think that will work, or do you have concerns that you're comfortable with?
I presume you would want the independent engineering consultant to also be available on the August 10th to answer those questions?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so do I get a confirmation from Woodard and Curran to be present on August 10th?
Confirmed.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank you, Jim and Tony.
Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is then, as I understand it from this discussion, if somebody's willing to make it, is to discuss this and have questions answered on the August 10, and then have it ready for a final vote and any last minute questions, clarifications on August 24.
So
in
moved.
addition to regular agenda items. And that was, Rick, you made the motion?
Yes.
And a second?
Second.
Second from Barbara. Roll call vote, please.
Director Penrose,
Yes.
Director Blanchard,
Yes.
Director Loman,
Yes.
Director Roddick,
You're on mute.
Director Roddick?
Yes.
Okay. Director Dye?
Yes.
Chair Slater Carter?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Did I hear Director Penrose?
Yes.
Did you vote, Deborah? Nod. Okay, good.
Yes.
I'm sorry. My attention wandered. Good. I think this is a good plan, and so is everyone clear on the deadlines for voting on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Good. Good. Okay, well, that is the end of regular business. And now we've got the general manager's report for June 2020.
Yep. The report is in the packet, and if there are any questions, staff is here to answer them.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any questions for the general manager's report?
Nope.
Don't see any hands up. Okay, let's move on.
I have a
then.
question, actually.
Oh,
Could you
okay.
just, describe the spill that just happened in just a small amount more detail?
Come again? We can't hear you very well. I can't hear you very well.
She had asked
Sorry.
for a description of the spill, Keishan, with more details on the spill. It's just
The one which happened today?
Yes.
Yeah, that's in Half Moon Bay, and we put together a report. We'll pass it on to you, although it's been sent to Half Moon Bay. It occurred in the jurisdiction of Half Moon Bay.
What happened?
Tim, are you there? Can you give a brief about the spill?
Yeah, from what after talking to Tony and the guys this afternoon after they came in, what happened was there was a call for a backup. Sims Plumbing was on site already at the time of the backup. The spill had already occurred when they had gotten there. The homeowners had a mushroom valve on their lateral line. So when there was a little bit of paper around the mushroom valve, and then when they took the mushroom valve off, then a little bit of the sewage had come out in the homeowner's yard. But the main line did have a blockage in it. We believe what it is we believe it is a section where there's a lateral line protruding into the main line. It's is something that's been identified in the past. It was televised and it was identified in the past. And we are going to go out and confirm that that's what it is, because we just want to make sure that it is what we think it is. And we're going to go out there tomorrow morning, televise that, see if it is in fact a protruding lateral. That if it is probably what the root cause was. No pun intended with root. But that's probably what the cause would be protruding lateral that caused the flushable wipes and toilet paper to get hung up on.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Now we're moving on to the attorney's report.
We have a couple closed session items, but I have nothing additional to report this evening.
Okay, director's reports. Rick, you sent out an interesting article on weather, anticipated weather and storm patterns in California. And would you like to send that along to Keishan?
Sure, let's do that. We don't need to talk about it. It's just, everybody knows with climate change and the forecast is for worse rainstorms to come. So that's all for now.
Okay, and thank you then. Topics for future board consideration. I think we've got that as an attachment. Let's recess this open session meeting and convene in closed session in 5 minutes or less. And so everybody who is not part of closed session, please sign off. And welcome, Michelle and Athena and everybody who participated. Thank you very much.
We'll be using the same link, correct?
Same link.
Same link.
Okay. Chris